Good afternoon and welcome. Welcome to another edition of Doctor to Doctor in the chat room. Welcome back on another beautiful Saturday. We are so glad to have you here with us. We are tag teaming it and I love it. I have Dr. Nicole West here. Again, we are doing this thing together and I'm enjoying every moment of it. You heard her last week and I am so glad that she is coming back every week to do this thing with me. This is going to be a great journey for us. Before we get started, we want to remind you guys to just stay safe and use the necessary precautions to stay safe. Wear your mask, don't congregate in large crowds if it's not necessary. Make sure that you are getting tested. If you don't know where to go to get tested, just simply contact your local health department and they can steer you in the right direction as to where you need to go to get tested. And people, we cannot mandate it, but we want to strongly encourage that you get your vaccines. We are on full rollout of the vaccine and you can just go to tn.gov and do a search there to find out where they are rolling out vaccines in your area and get vaccinated so that we can get this doggone pandemic behind us. We've had over a year now of just having to be so careful and not feeling like we are in our quote unquote norm. And we want to get back to some sense of that if at all possible. So please do that. Hey, Dr. Nicole West, how are you?
No, I'm good. I'm good. I'm so glad that you opened with these precautions about COVID and just encouraging people to remain socially distant and wear the mask. And if we could talk just for a second about the vaccine, I know there's a whole lot of distrust and skepticism in our community specifically about getting vaccinated. And so I completely understand that. I have family members who are terrified of it and who are just refusing to do it. And then I have other family members that got it as soon as they could. I was a little skeptical in the beginning too. I'm not gonna try to hide that. But I chucked it up to, we all just have to do our part. And I'm putting my faith in the scientists and God really that I am going to be okay once I get the vaccination. And I didn't have any issues with it. The first time my arm hurt a little bit, second time my arm hurt a little bit, and I had a little bit of a headache. But when I went to bed that night, I woke up and I was totally fine the next day. And that's been about a month and I've not had any kind of complications. So I just wanted to say that quickly. If there's anybody who was comforted by that.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, and that seems to be a pattern. People are having a little bit of tenderness at the injection site on the first one, and then the second one. If anybody, for the people that have anything that go on, they're usually saying it's something really small, and it lasted a few hours, and they were just fine. And I understand the concerns because just as the disparities as it relates to the virus itself and how African American and people of color have been negatively impacted more so by the virus. I think it's been the same thing with some of the vaccinations, but I think that too has been a result of a lot of underlying things that, so it's not like everybody, right? So good point. We have to do our part. Right. Let's do our part. I got folks that I love that I haven't really been able to hang out with and do stuff with, on the norm, and I want to see them again and do stuff with them. And I've lost a lot of family members and friends to this virus, and but at the same time, I've got some people that I care about still here, and we want to make sure that we stay here for as long as God will allow, right? Yeah, so we've got a little bit of a different show. You guys have heard our girl talk show, you've heard our guy talk show, and we talk about relationships. We wanted to kind of address this whole thing about dating in 2021, dating in a pandemic. Everything's so different now. I want to talk about the single life, singlehood. A lot of people are looking to be in relationships, but there are some too that are saying, hey, I'm happy just being single. But we want to talk about it nonetheless, because I think, it is a big thing, you know, whether folks are um, married and been married for a while and they have struggled. I know a lot of people that have struggled within the pandemic because folks weren't used to being in each other's space all the time. Because for a while we were all just locked down in each other's space, you know, for folks that were able to get out pre-pandemic and during the pandemic you were isolated and you weren't even able to get out and try to meet anyone, you know, that's been a struggle. I was reading an article I was sharing with you before the show, um, where they kind of broke down these categories of dating in 2021. One was called hardballing, and they said that these are the folks that like to date like the CEO. You know, it's pretty quick. Like they meet people, they know right away, this is not for me, moving right along. And so they don't spend a lot of time uh they don't invest a lot of time in trying to get to know a person. They look for certain characteristics right off the bat and say, nope, moving right along. Now, I think a lot of people try to say that these folks are superficial. I beg to differ. Not that I can't be, you know, I can't be wrong, but I do feel very strongly that I might fall into that category because at this point, I am so sure about what works for me, right? And what doesn't.
Yeah.
And so when I start to see things, and so if I'm dating somebody that's in my age bracket, right? Some things that I think we kind of have in common across the board, like we've all experienced relationships or marriage, we all know what we want now, right? We're all sure about what we want. Like, you know, we're not 25 anymore. And if it starts to look like it's not going to be certain things, you know, we have our negotiables and our non-negotiables.
Yeah.
When I see the non-negotiables like popping out right away,
Yeah. And so I think that, you know, there's a good part about that, and then there might be a, you know,
a questionable piece.
Yeah, but I agree with, you know, we are not getting any younger. We have limited time. I mean, let's just be real. We all have limited time on this earth. So it makes sense to use it wisely. And if you are meeting somebody who, you know, is not moving in the same direction that you are, then it makes sense to say, I'm not going to waste my time. But then the downside is, what if you meet somebody who might be an introvert and it just takes them a little while to show you who they really are. And it just takes them a while to warm up and to be who, you know, be themselves around you. And if you didn't give them enough time and you wrote them off because, you know, I need somebody who is, you know, the life of the party. You know, you may have missed out on your person, but so I understand it from both perspectives. You know, we're not getting any younger. We don't have a lot of time to wait.
So here's one of the things that I think is a problem, you know, and please know that when I'm speaking from personal perspective, right? My age, my experience, and all of that. You know, people in my age bracket have been in 20, 30-year relationships / marriages, right? And so I hear guys say a whole lot. Yeah, I got divorced. I was married for 25 years. I ain't even thinking about committing to anybody. Like I'm having fun. I never had fun. I never enjoyed life. And there are women, I'm sure, that would say, you know, the same things. So when you but from a female perspective, when you think about the ratio of male to female or female to male, whichever, if there's already a shortage of men, right? And then other things come into play when you're talking about heterosexual relationships versus homosexual relationships, then you know it's just a limited pool. And then within that limited pool, there are other limitations, right?
Right.
Because people, we were just talking last week about narcissistic abuse, and people have been in relationships and have been damaged and broken, and
right. And then you tack on your own personal preferences for what you want in a person, and that limits it even more.
and your own baggage and your own baggage.
Yes, yes. And sometimes, and I don't know whether men do this or not, but I know, and now not all women do this, but I know that some of us have a very long list of things, of requirements. And sometimes, first of all, we do need a list of something, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't
You need goals. You need goals.
yeah, it doesn't need to fill up an entire notebook of requirements, but you do need some requirements, but they do limit, the pool even more when you tack on all of those personal preferences and requirements. He got to be at least 6'5" and have a whatever kind of job, drive a nice car, want kids, and never been married. All of those things. Sometimes we push ourselves out of that pool because we have such strict
If a 55-year-old guy tells me he wants kids, then I know I'm doomed. I'm just saying.
Right,
I'm just saying. And so my list seems to be very small. It's a pretty good list. It's not. It's a list of things that I would say really of things of substance, right? But small nonetheless.
Mm-hmm.
And simple, I believe. I often it makes me say this quite a bit. So it seems the simplest things are the hardest to come by. I say that quite a bit, right?
When you said simple, it made me think like simple to who? Simple to us as women or simple to men? Because then you start talking about the differences in how we see things. And what's simple to us is usually complicated to them for some reason, or vice versa.
Mm-hmm. So it's pretty deep because here's one of the things that I get really deep with this one. Here's one of the things that's at the top of my list: communication. Okay.
Oh yes.
And when I say communication, I don't just mean communication for the sake of resolution. Mm-hmm. I mean communication overall. Okay. Yeah. And now let me go back this is his history on communication in my culture. Okay. Mm-hmm. So we typically grow up in homes where we don't get to express ourselves, particularly as children. When we start saying things, we're talking back, right? Mm-hmm. I said it, I meant it, that's the end of it. So I don't know if that's part of it or not. I could be totally off base, but there's a reason why communicating is so hard. And sometimes I notice it seems it's something like oh, I better not say too much. If I say too much, I might reveal too much. Yeah. Or sometimes they don't seem to know what to say. Like they have nothing to say. And so personally, I'm a person that would need mental stimulation just to have regular conversations of substance. Right. That's just who I am. Yeah. Like I'm that person.
Yeah. And if you get with, if you start dating somebody who has been taught to minimize communication, or who has been taught that communicating is not really valuable, and then y'all clash because you have a need to connect and communicate and talk and verbalize and express yourself, and they have a need for the exact opposite, and then they say opposites attract, but not with everything.
Not necessarily. Because if I'm having a conversation and I gotta keep it going, and I start to feel like I'm struggling with what I'm gonna say next because you don't have anything to say.
Tribute, right?
that's not superficial to me. I'm going to say I'm back to hardballing. I'm going to say nope, moving right along. Nice person, nice guy,
but just not for me.
not for me.
Yeah. And that's one of the important things I think about dating is realizing what you need in a partner. And also realizing you're not going to get 100% of that in any one person. That's just never going to happen. So some of what you need might need to get met by other relationships or other circumstances. But if you know you are a person that needs to communicate, loves to express himself and talk and have conversations and spirited debates and all of that, and you find somebody who just isn't into that, then that's one of those situations that's a non-negotiable. And that person's not going to change later because
Right.
you want them to. They are going to be who they are. They might have their representative in the beginning and kind of show you a little bit of what you want, but once they get comfortable, they're gonna be who they are, and you will have to have accepted that because you gave them the okay by saying yes, I want to be in a relationship with you when I knew you weren't going to provide the kind of communication and mental stimulation that I needed.
Yeah. I think that there are too many folks that um and I could have been guilty of this in my lifetime that try to love people the way they see love.
Yeah.
You know,
Uh-huh.
I think loving is this. So that's what I do when I'm trying to love someone, right? As opposed to really taking the time to get to know someone and trying to provide it that you think you want to love, right? That you would like to have to share love with and say, well, you know, what do they need?
Right.
And be honest and transparent about can I provide them with what they need? You know, and
Right.
I mean, I can appreciate if somebody say, you know what, I know I haven't been the best at communication, but I'm going to work on that because I know that's something that's important and that you value, right? But you know, I think we get to a
Right.
point in life where we kind of get as people have said many years, you know, the saying get set in our ways, and we're just not willing
Yep.
to modify who we are,
Right.
tweak any of our what we would normally do
Right.
for something that could potentially be really good.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is so important to know that about your person. If they seem motivated to improve and change and they don't take that as a slight to themselves, um, then that opens up a whole new door for y'all to grow together.
Yeah.
But they are the kind of person that, I said what I said and I am who I am and you can take it or
Yep.
leave it,
That's right.
then yeah, keep moving. That's one of those CEO moments where you say that this is not going to be for me.
That's what I was about to say,
Um,
and I totally get what you said about, you know, you might not be giving it enough time, but I think when something
mhm,
huge like that jumps out at me,
yeah,
that I know is
yeah,
totally against what I need, I just think,
right.
yeah.
Keep it moving. Yeah. One of the other things that you just mentioned that reminded me. So there's that love language quiz where
Yes.
you can figure out,
Yes.
what is it about the way that I receive love, um, because this quiz will basically tell you these are the ways that I feel loved.
Yeah.
Um, I think the categories are gifts, which is my love language, which is why I can remember that first.
Service.
Service, uh,
Communication.
yes,
Touch.
physical touch, and quality time. I think is the
Quality
last.
time. That's the one.
Yes, and so this quiz will basically it will ask you some questions, and based on your responses, it will tell you these are your top two ways that you receive love.
Mm-hmm.
And that you can then communicate that to the other person because we all receive love differently. What works for one person may not work for the other person. And if you're in a relationship and your love language is gifts, then you might automatically assume, oh, that's their I'm going to give them gifts because that's what I want.
That's
But
what
maybe
we do. We try to love the way we want to be loved. But you
yeah,
know, I really want to talk more about communicating what we want. I
yeah,
like that you said communicating what we want. And the first thing that popped in my head is what I said about communication being so important to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what about when you're trying to communicate what you want to someone that doesn't communicate well? We'll talk about that when we come back from break on 94.7 FM.
All right.
Guys, we're back on 94.7 FM. Your host, co-host, Dr. Rhonda Shaw, Dr. Nicole West, and we're talking relationships. So, Dr. West, what about when you are communicating what your languages are, what your love language are, but you communicate it to someone that doesn't communicate well? I just talked about that. So if it's someone that can't really process the fact that I'm trying to give you really a cheat sheet here, right? I'm telling you what it is I need. I can accept the whole concept of I tell you what I need and then you say, oh, well, I appreciate you telling me. I don't think I can provide that. And good luck. But what about you just don't get it? Or what about you hear it and you get it and you still can't do it? Because some people are in the habit of loving the way they want to be loved. It's a habit. And you can't, some people, a person that like gifts on my quiz, the love language quiz, was 0.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
Somebody else that might have a 0 on gifts would be like, oh, so she is materialistic.
Yeah.
Get my point? You got my point?
Yeah. And honestly, I feel that way when I say that out loud, that one of my love languages is gifts. In the back of my mind, I'm like, oh, is this person going to hear this as she's materialistic? And so that might deter you from communicating that need. And then let's say that you don't, because you don't want it to be perceived wrong, and y'all are in a relationship. That means you're not getting your needs met because you weren't honest about what you needed when y'all communicated that. And so then you don't get gifts, and that builds resentment because you feel like some needs aren't being met, but you didn't really communicate it honestly.
What is that term that guys use a lot for women? High maintenance. High maintenance.
Yeah.
High maintenance. I'm so offended by that term because let me tell you why. Because my definition of it, I think that it's like, okay, she expects somebody to, buy her nice clothes and get her hair done and get her nails done. And I'm thinking, but when I see you, I'm going to present myself to you in that way. I'm going to present myself to you together. So my maintenance done by me. It's done by me. I don't look for you to do it. That said,
right.
So that said, though, what about professional women who are very capable of taking care of themselves? And
I like that word better, capable.
Yeah.
Because independent has a negative connotation now to women. Oh, that means you don't need no man. That means no, it just means that I'm capable. I like capable. Okay, go ahead. That was a good one.
Yeah, so we're capable of doing it, but we get penalized for doing it. Right. Now I'm kind of over that. So that has put me back to the hardballing. That has put me back to seeking a certain guy that looks at me and says, she's got it together. She can do, when it comes to just making it in life, and provisions. She can do that on her own. And I have to know what I bring to the table. And it's not about anything materialistic.
Right.
So I think it makes you value yourself differently.
Yes. So I remember quite a few years before I got married, and when I was dating, I would, and you probably gonna be like, oh Lord, that's not the way to go about that. But felt very strongly about not allowing the man to assume that I was assuming he was going to pay for dinner or whatever, what, you know, wherever we were. And so I would do this thing where when the check came, I would move to pull out my wallet and say, oh, okay, either, you know, we can split this, or I got it, or something, because I was so hyper vigilant about being called a gold digger, right? I never wanted anybody to think that I was using any person for
Dr.
something. And
West, not the purse reach.
I know. There was a friend of mine that said, I'm gonna need you not to do that anymore. And I said, well, I just was trying to make sure whoever he was, know that, you know, I can take care of myself. I'm not necessarily looking for you to take care of me. I'm looking for you to add to, you know, what I already got going on. And I was so, because you know, you hear all these songs about women being Kanye West. It was around that time with the Gold Digger song. And I was so adamant about, there is not going to be a man that's going to call me that. So I'm gonna let you know right off the bat, I'm good.
Yeah.
And I had a conversation with somebody that said, ma'am, don't do that. Just don't do it. So I had to stop. But it's just how, you know, sensitive we can be to the media, to
Yeah.
just our society and the messages that we get. So you know, I've calmed that down a little bit, but
Now,
you
I'm
know.
laughing at you, but I'm just as guilty. Not of the purse reach, but
Mhm.
just asking simply, right? Because I think it's important the role that our fathers, you know, play in our
Yeah.
lives, right? And you know, my father is a man that has made great provisions for his family. You know, if he's taken out, you know, any of us, period, but certainly if it's my mom, you know, if
Yeah.
it's me or my daughter or whatever, you know, no matter what we do, we just tease with him on Mother's Day. Everybody was, we were doing the purse reach on Mother's Day, right? Me, my daughter, and my mom, we were all doing the purse reach, but we knew he was gonna, gonna handle it, right?
Yes.
But I think for me, I am very independent, that word with the negative connotation, right? I am very independent. So what I had to do was I had to be very intentional and aware of myself. And I,
Yeah.
what I started doing was I said, instead of, and I feel really uncomfortable at check time. Let me just be real serious and open about it. I
Ooh,
get really uncomfortable at check time. But when it's over and done, the way I manage my feelings is by saying, thank you so much for lunch. Thank you so much for dinner.
yeah.
Thank you. And here's what I've convinced myself of, whether it's true or not, that a real man, and I you know how we use that phrase, um,
Yes.
would
Yes.
would just be grateful that I thought enough to say thank you and not just get up from the
Right.
table and walk away like he was
Yes.
supposed to,
Yeah.
like it was something he was supposed
Right.
to do, right? And so that's what I try to make sure that I do, is to show that I am grateful that you would buy my lunch,
Yeah.
you would buy my dinner or
Yeah.
whatever. But I so get what you were saying, though. I was teasing about it, but I get it, you know, because it's so many things that come into play. And I think that's another thing about, you know, being single in this era. And you know, you were talking last week about, you know, going through your divorce and everything, and you know, after the divorce. And so if you've been married to somebody a long time and you're just accustomed to, you know, for instance, particularly in a marriage, you know, you're at dinner and you can pull out either credit card because it's just coming from the household, right?
Right.
Yeah. But when you're going back to that place where, okay, this person is not obligated to do this, and I don't want them to think that, you know, the reason we're here is because I'm trying to get a free meal. And I know that people, women probably do that, you know,
Of
go get a
course.
meal and don't, you know, but
Yeah.
everyone's not that way. It's a
Right.
challenging time, but you know, everybody that is single is
Hmm.
is not lonely.
Right.
You
Right.
know, there are people such as myself that I enjoy my life very much. I am so grateful for learning how to love me. A lot of people don't
Mhm.
understand that, when you haven't done a good job of it always, and then you finally get to the point where you love you, people take it,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's like a whole new world.
it's a whole new world. And,
I was just
people take offense. They think you're doing something against them. It's something against them, but it's not. It's just me taking care of me.
for once and maybe for the first time.
Yeah.
Um, and so I was just saying to someone the other day, and it reminded me when you said, just because you're single doesn't mean you're lonely. There are people in marriages with a companion who are lonely. I was one of those people in a marriage who was lonely. And so when I got a divorce and we separated and went our separate ways, I now embrace this new I'll call it loneliness, but that's not what it feels like. But I embrace it because it is so much better to be quote unquote lonely when you're by yourself than it is to be lonely with someone.
So I think
Um,
I think the difference is you are alone, but you are not lonely.
that's it. Yes, that is it. And those are two very different things.
Yeah.
Very different things. And so I embrace this new time that I have with myself, the ability to decorate how I want, watch what I want, cook what I want, go where I want. It's there's a pro and a con to everything, and it's all about how you look at it, how you think about it. Um, Being single is not all bad. You can spend time with yourself. You can spend time learning who you are, what you want, because you tend to lose yourself in relationships. You don't have to, but it's very easy to,
Mhm.
especially if you've been with somebody for a really long time. You tend to start to cater to what they want, what they need, and you can lose what your voice. You can lose. There's women who or men who you might ask after a marriage, well, what do you like? And they don't even know. They can't even tell you because they haven't thought about themselves in
Yeah, one
forever.
of the things that you and I talked about was even friends, like there may have been mutual friends,
Mhm.
when you're in a long marriage, mutual friends, and all of a sudden, they might choose sides and go one way. And so you may find yourself, having to develop friendships all over again. One of my favorite biblical characters is Paul. And one of the things that I love about Paul is, when Paul was in prison or when he was in jail, and how he utilized his time. Okay.
Yes.
So he was in there writing the letters to the churches, and all of that. And it reminds me kind of even situations with the late great Dr. Martin Luther King, and how when they would have him in jail and he'd be write these letters and all that. And that's what I think about. Like, how do we utilize our time? So while you wait, while you are single, what are you doing? Like you said, how are you working on yourself? Do you need to work out your mind, exercise your mind? Do you need to go back to school? And
Yes.
ask yourself, what do you think a good girlfriend or boyfriend looks like? What would a good husband or wife look like? What can I do to work on me to start looking like that? How can I get myself ready? Maybe I didn't, when I reflect on my last relationships, maybe there were things that had to be, because no one's perfect, that I needed to work on. I'm going to be working on those things. And when he or she shows up, I'm going to be
I'm gonna
ready.
be ready. That's right.
Mhm.
Yeah. And it's when you bring up Paul, it is interesting because he had to be there, didn't have a choice,
Yeah.
but he figured out a way to, if this is going to be my reality, how do I make it work best for me?
Yeah.
And if you are single and that's your reality, how do you use the time to make you the best you that you can be? And for me, a lot of that was figuring out ways to get closer to God. Uh,
Mm.
so I really dove into my church. I joined a couple committees and got to know people and did some volunteering and really got more into reading the Bible. And I need to be better about that. But that was the time for me to do it because I had no reason not to. This divorce kind of pushed me into being closer to God, and I don't think that would have happened had I still been in this. I know it wouldn't have happened, and so I feel that was God's way of
Yeah.
showing you
Hmm.
need to draw closer to me,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna work all the rest of it out. And
Mhm.
so, I trust that at some point, I may meet that guy. But when I do, like you said, I want to be ready, because
Yeah.
I don't want to be in a situation where I meet them and they are doing the what it wasn't CEO dating. What was it called?
The hard balling.
Yes, they're doing the hardballing and they meet me and I'm not at my best and they don't give me the time of day because I
Yeah.
haven't worked on myself at the time when I had the opportunity.
Yeah.
So I want to be ready. I want to be ready.
And we talked last week about the narcissistic relationships and all that. And if you've been involved in something like that, or just a toxic relationship, and you've gotten out of it and you found yourself in a single state, rebuild your self-esteem.
Mhm.
Rebuild yourself as a person. Take the time to do what you need to do for you, because you don't want any of that, what we call baggage, to have a negative bearing on something that could potentially be really beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't want to run anybody off, man or woman.
Yeah.
You want to present yourself in the best possible way that you can. You want to be the best you that you can be, because what you can do at that point when you're the best you that you can be, you can y'all can grow together. We are never done learning. Like, we are lifelong learners, and we need to have the mindset of I am not perfect, nor will I ever be, but I can be the most perfect me that I can, as long as I keep learning and applying things that I've learned, and utilizing them, and and understanding that you help your partner helps you, and y'all help each other grow as a couple. But if you're not quite ready, then
Yeah.
you end up repeating the same patterns that you did with the previous relationships.
Yeah. And the flip side of that hardballing is the slow dating, which they kind of call the crock pot dating.
Hmm.
You kind of throw everything in the crock pot and just let it simmer and take your time. I don't know why when I read that, I hear the person that says, can just be friends and kind of see where it goes. Now, I
Hmm.
do not sit in the judgment seat. I say, if that's what you need to do with somebody, that's what you do. You take it slow, you know what I'm saying, to see where it goes. But as you said, with the word independent and the negative connotations, I think that there are negative connotations with that too, because many times people feel that when that is said, this is somebody that's not necessarily ready,
Yeah.
or it's somebody that is afraid because they what they have gone through in past relationships. I kind of want to move into some of the things that we talked about on our Guy Talk and Girl Talk shows. We talked about, submission. We talked about soulmates and all of that. I kind of want to move into that direction when we come back from break. We'll be right back on 94.7 FM.
Okay.
And we are back. I am here with Dr. Nicole West. We are talking relationships and dating in 2021. First, before we move into submission and all that, gosh, the pandemic,
Yes.
that did a
It
thing. Didn't it?
did. It did. It's so interesting dating during a pandemic now, because you have to keep things in mind that you just didn't think about before. Is this person getting tested? If they're not, do I want to be around them? Am I
Mhm.
just going to say, hope for the best? I had been on a couple dates during the pandemic, and one of them was, we met outside at Shelby Farms and just walked the trails. And I was like, this was such a great idea. It wasn't mine, unfortunately, but it was his idea. And I thought, this is great, because we don't have to be worried about being in a, enclosed place. We're outside. We still wore our masks, but it you have to be creative, unfortunately, during the pandemic, to try to date and meet people and mingle and all of that stuff. But yeah, it's definitely changed the game for sure.
So in our girl talk, guy talk shows, you know, we talked about the dirty word, you know, submission. And it was so interesting to get the different perspectives, the different,
Mhm.
not just from a male and female perspective, but there were a variety of perspectives within both genders about it. And for me, I always say, first of all, the Bible says submit one to the other. But I always say when God says, you know, submit, he would not be talking about a knucklehead, right? So if if a man presents himself, right, and you know, on a level that he is worthy
Yeah. Hmm.
of
That.
that, I'm like, oh Lord, you just overflowed and you just
Yes.
went there that time, Lord. You know, because that is a person that is to me fully aware of, you know, you should love your wife like God loves like
Yeah.
Christ loves the church.
Right.
Um, that's a huge responsibility, and but it's not an impossible
Right.
responsibility, but huge nonetheless.
Right. Right. And for me, that's the most important part of, can I submit to this man? Is, has this man submitted to God? Because if he has,
Yes.
then I can trust that if I submit to you, it's not going to be detrimental to my well being. It's not going to be taken advantage of, because I know you have submitted to God, and therefore you will treat me in a way that God would treat me. Well, not a man
Yeah,
can't do
of
that,
course. Uh-huh. Mhm.
but you know what I know that if he is submitted to God, he's not going to take advantage of me submitting to him. And that's where I find the hardest time with the submission topic, because I think men just, some men are, I'm a man and you should submit to me. Well, that's not all that's required. Not for me anyway. Have you submitted to God is really important to me. And if not, then yeah, no, I can't trust you to submit to you.
So it's interesting that you said that because I remember some years ago when, for me, I used to say, and I had a conversation with my father about this once. I used to say, you know what? You know, he doesn't have to go to church, right? Everybody that doesn't go to church, um, you know, it doesn't mean they're a bad person or whatever.
Mhm.
So interesting how that has changed over time.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
now, and as I remember my dad, I was asking him, well, so what if you met somebody? They don't go to church. And he's like, well, you can get them to church and we can, you know, we can get them converted, you know, whatever he said. He's always such a, you know, comedian about it. But now I'm like, you know what? You don't love God. I can't do it. I can't wait. I don't, I'm not saying that I can't be friends with someone and I'm not saying that, you know, or whatever, but for a committed relationship, I think that may be part of the equally yoked.
Yes. Yeah.
And I mean, I at least need us both to love God, know God. I might be a little bit more advanced, or you may be a little bit more advanced,
Right.
but we both going in the same direction.
That's the important part. And that, I think, is where I made an exception before, where I should not have. And man, did God show me how much of a mistake that was. And I will never make that mistake again. Of knowing someone knows God, but you're not really, you're not really following him. You're not really submitting yourself to him, is really what it is. And I made exceptions for that before, and you know the rest of the story. So for
Yeah.
me, that is the most important thing at this point. submitted yourself to God. Because if not, then we can't. There's nothing. Mm-mm.
Yeah.
No, man.
Do you believe in soulmates?
I used to, and now I am more. I think there's a lot of people you can be happy with. I think relationships are what you put into it, what you make it, much like life. But do I believe that there's just one person out there for you? Um, Again, I used to, but I used to do a lot of things and believe a lot of things in my 20s that I just don't anymore. Um, so I think, basically the answer I think is no. I don't necessarily believe in soulmates. I believe there's a lot of people that you can connect with,
Mhm.
um, a lot of people that you can build a life with. But I don't think that pool is huge. I think there is a narrow, a minimal set of people that could happen with. But I don't know. And maybe I'm just jaded after the divorce, Dr. Shaw. Maybe I no longer believe in
So
soulmates. I don't know, but
yeah, but I think you're going somewhere with that because I think that there are many times when we cross paths with people, when God puts people in our lives and us
yeah,
in other folks' lives, and it's not for the sake of a romantically based relationship, but we jump into that, and then when it goes sour or whatever, and we're trying to figure out what happened. Well, no, you were here for another reason. And if you
right,
reflect on those relationships, you may realize I do remember I helped him through this, or I remember he was very good at talking me through or helping me with this, or you know what I'm saying? He helped me to be a better person in some ways, but we should not have been into, we should not have taken it further. And an
right,
extension of that is, oh, Father God, how many folks that are in, when I say long term, like relationships that are so unhappy,
yeah,
but they have come to a point where um it's just not logical or feasible to
mm-hmm,
dissolve a
mm-hmm,
relationship.
mm-hmm,
Um, I think my biggest fear is being that person.
mm,
It's
yeah,
it's getting in it and saying, well, I don't want to go through another failed relationship, so I'll just stay.
yep.
I don't want anybody saying this. Now, I'm tickled inside even saying this because Rhonda Shaw is so not that person that cares. You know, you do care what folks say or think to some degree. I mean, just as a Christian, we don't want to be like offensive or we know what I'm saying or whatever to other people, but people that just talk just for the sake of moving their mouths and having something negative to say, I could really care less what they think. I need to ensure my own joy,
Right, yes,
I'll say, because my father has always made this distinction between happiness and joy, and I want to ensure my own joy, okay,
yeah,
and it to be the joy of the Lord.
right,
Um, and so God keeps us. I mean, when you have that mindset, and mindset is everything.
yeah,
It's
absolutely,
everything. I didn't realize how much I could enjoy my life without a,
mm-hmm,
re- a relationship. I
mm-hmm,
welcome it when it's time, but
right,
I am like so
yeah,
enjoying my life. Like there's nothing that I think of that I want to do that I say, well, can't do that because I'm single. No, I do
right.
whatever it is I think I want to do, and I enjoy every moment of it.
And that I think is the key to being healthy in a relationship. Once you get into one, is being happy and whole within yourself before you get into a relationship, because so many people are looking to the other person to make them feel whole or to bring them happiness or joy, when that's one, not their job, but like not even something that they're capable of doing.
You have to do that for yourself.
Yes, yes. And so I think what, like the way you just described how content and joyful you are about being who you are by yourself is really a sign of how you will be in a relationship, which is happy and whole, because I was that way before I got to you. And we can only hope that the person we end up coming into contact with is also happy and whole before they made it to me, so that we join as two happy and whole people, as opposed to two broken people trying to fix each other, because it just never works. It just
But
never
it's
works that way.
such a crucial point. Because as you're saying that, I'm reflecting on past relationships and realizing that like I wasn't happy going into it, right? Had nothing to do with them necessarily.
Right.
Yeah, but I
Right.
wasn't necessarily this whole happy person who
Right.
had certainly come into herself, who had certainly learned to love herself, who has certainly learned how not to be shaken by the things that people do. I don't care, friend or foe. I don't care. You know, I don't allow people to do. I want to love people. I'm just saying, folks in
Mhm.
general. I want to love people. But when you show me that, like you said, when people show you who they are, believe it. When you show me that you don't love me, I don't want to hear all that. Well, that's your
Mhm.
so and so, or this. I don't want to hear all that, right? I have to make sure that I'm healthy
Yeah.
and that I'm gonna use the word happy here. I'm healthy and happy.
Yeah.
And nobody's responsibility for that. It's nobody's responsibility other than mine.
Yeah.
It's my
That's right.
responsibility. And when I take on that responsibility every day when I wake up.
Yep.
Sometimes I
Yep.
do a really good job. I go most
Mhm.
days I'm going into the workplace and you have to deal with toxicity there. Most days I do a really good job of ensuring that at the end of the work day or the end of my day, I have protected my own joy and happiness, right? And have not allowed anyone to shake it or steal it or whatever we say, but there are other days when I don't do so good. But the good part is I'm aware
That's
and I know how to get back to me.
yes. That's the key. Awareness is always the key.
Yeah.
Um, I heard someone say yesterday, as and I've heard this a bunch of times, but as Christians, we need to keep our gaze on God, and we might glance at some other things, but our gaze needs to be on Him, um, and that really just helps on those days when we're not doing so well with blocking out the negativity or the toxicity. But as long as we keep our gaze on Him, He will walk us through whatever it is that we whatever we encounter that's difficult. And that could be, if you're in a relationship like you said earlier that you just don't have the strength to get out of or the courage to get out of, if you're in a job that you don't feel appreciated, if you have friendships who have forsaken you, whatever the situation is, if you're single and you hate being single, like keeping your gaze on God will help you to make it through all of those trials, all those tribulations. So I have to constantly remind myself of that, because my gaze sometimes gets a little off, and it starts to focus on all the negative things, and then I remember, just gaze on Him. You can glance at some other stuff, but you got to keep your gaze on God, and that usually will kind of pull me back into you know
Yeah. Where you
feeling,
need to be.
thinking right.
Mhm. I had a devotional a few weeks ago that talked about keeping God on the throne. And
Mm-hmm.
of course, things are always so uh timely, right? I'm just
Mm-hmm.
learning at this age. It's just I'm becoming so aware of this daily bread thing, with God and how He gives us exactly what we need every day. And this devotion was talking about keeping God on the throne and how we take Him down and we put up our anxieties, we put
Yeah.
our loneliness up there, we put our burdens up there, we let them take control and take precedence in our lives, you know. But when you keep Him on
Yep.
the throne, right, you can make it through anything. That said, I think we are out of time. I am so elated that we had another great conversation, Dr. West. I will see you back
Yeah.
here next Saturday at the same time, and we will see you guys right back here, same time, same place, every Saturday, right here on the Gospel Giant for Doctor to Doctor in the chat room on 94.7 FM. We will see you then.